we are here with Karolina Engman from Sweden, from Malmö, and who is participating this year to our festival with her film Ruthless. And this film is an animated short based on photographs and reflecting upon memory processing of a lost home. The house goes through a transition from present to absent to eventually become an object of memory, where soundscapes are repeated to a point where technological errors make an imprint as the house becomes more distant in the movement of time. This was for us a very fascinating movie, I need to say. And yeah, when we decided to select it, we were very fascinated by the technique, of course, but it's not only a technically well-made film, because it really creates through this technique a very strong evocative atmosphere. So my first question for you, Karolina, how did you get the idea for this movie, and how did you come to use this specific technique?
Thank you. It's fun to hear that you enjoyed the film. But the background behind the film, in terms of technique and the thematic, is I've been quite interested in spaces the last couple of years, where the attendants are anonymous, and the uncanny feeling and contrast where there is movement of people, but also movement of events. But despite that, there's a strong sense of absence. And for example, I've been working with office spaces and commercial spaces, such as bingo halls. And in relation to that, I started to work with abandoned spaces, where I started to use this technique, which is called photogrammetry. And the technique is basically building three-dimensional spheres based on two-dimensional images or pictures. And I was interested in the transformation of a present environment to a flickering memory image. And to me, the photogrammetry technique illustrates just that, how a memory is never accurate. And when we're repeating memories to ourselves, we add or we forget details to keep them vivid. And since they're not present in front of us, there's a lot of gaps or holes of information, which we are constantly trying to fill or make sense of. And for this specific film, when my mother passed away, these were questions I was dealing with in my practice. And it felt so natural to me to make a film about losing a very known place to me as the house I grew up in. And in the film, I'm aiming to narrate how the house moves from being a present environment and how it becomes an object of memory as time is passing. Where the visual aspect is sort of struggling with keeping the location whole with the two-dimensional images, but also the sound, which has more a technical imprint after it's being repeated, and as the house moves further and further away from the viewer.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting, and you touched a lot of points that actually were parts of my next questions, because it's true that the film is really addressing the theme of memory and how it works. When I saw this film, really this house appeared to me as a sort of digital wreck, because as you said, there are the space is full of holes and black spots where it seems like memory is cancelled, is not present there. And so yeah, the question I wanted to ask you, maybe you already answered a bit, but how important was the theme of digital tools as memory preservation tools for you in the making of this film? And also, yeah, if you think, but I guess, I mean, you somehow you already answered, like if you think that this digital and 3D images with their glitches and simplified surfaces, because there is also this aspect of having a sort of simplified version of the real shapes that we experience in the reality. Do you think that this digital kind of images could be somehow for us in the present moment a representation of how we keep memories inside of us? Like it seems that your film is suggesting actually this.
Yeah, I think like the layer of using a technology as a tool of memory is interesting, since it's an everyday use of technology that we use to remember. For example, photographs are something we rely on to remind ourselves of our memories. And it's just something that is very natural to us to do nowadays. And even though just a small element of a memory, it can also suggest other aspects of a memory. It can remind us of a sound or a smell. But what is really in front of us when looking at the photograph is only a small part of the memory, what it consists of. And I think that parallel or connection is interesting. That's already there. We are constructing the missing parts, which in itself makes the memories quite unreliable and after time reshapeable. They change after we retell them, and that is also a contrast I think is quite interesting. Like even though they're from the past, they sort of relive again and again as we retell them. And it's something I've been reading a lot by, or in the book Poetics of Space by Gaston Bachelard. And it's a quote that I think of quite a lot, that it is this balance between the real and the unreal aspect that retains a place or a memory from the past as a living value. And I think it's something very surreal about technology also, but we use it as a documentary element. So that's something I think of a lot, these layers of technology in my work.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. And another thing is that you talked about spaces, like you said that spaces are really a theme in your works, even in your previous works. And and of course in this one is really the main thing, like we are exploring a space. And I was thinking that this space is not just a space, but is a house. So like we can really have this feeling of entering in the private space of someone, because we see a lot of everyday objects and furniture and objects on the table. Like we really see we really have the impression of entering a moment of life of someone which is forgotten, somehow abandoned there. And my question was, how important was for you the house, because you said that this house was a house of your childhood, but for the viewer is just a house, of course. There is no explanation of the story of what's behind, but for sure we receive a lot of intimacy from this space. So how important is the house as a symbol in this film? as a as almost an archetype.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, the house symbolizes life, and in some cases, comfort. Also, identity and roots, because I believe that we have memory and memories of places that are important in shaping our identities. Because it's easier to relate to places that we have been exposed to, and places that we are familiar with somehow gives us a sense of comfort. And we are also more drawn to places that are familiar or that we have in our memory already. But with that said, I think in this film, the house is representing losing one of the vital parts of one's identity, but also losing the present aspect of one's first memories, which is also connected to one's identity, I think. Like one of the first places that you lived in, and what happens with that when it's not a present location to you anymore.
Thank you. Yeah, what I really like is the fact that all this is not explained in the film. This background aspect, but I feel that probably the atmosphere of the film is so strong also because of that. So it's just there is no need for explanation, because you just can feel the atmosphere. So this, I think, makes the film really successful somehow and strong. So it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, my last question is if you are now working on something new, where is your research going to at the moment? We are curious of it.
Yeah, thank you. Right now I'm working on my bachelor project, and the project is about a minority population who used to live on the west coast of Estonia, who were deported from their homes during the Second World War. And during the deportation from their homes, they were scattered over Sweden, Finland, and Ukraine. And at the same time, their culture and their language, because they had their own language, were lost when they moved to new countries. And I'm interested in this topic because my grandfather grew up in one of the villages along the west coast. And it's going to be a conversation about his memory of the landscape, regarding his roots and also his home, but also with other people from the area. And in the film, I think the layers of technology also will have an evident impact on the narrative, where I will mix elements of time, but also elements or layers of technology that we used to remember, such as traditional older techniques of photography and the three-dimensional photographies that I am working with now. And I think to me it's about that, the layering of memory and layering of time, but also where language and culture goes when it's no longer in use. So I'm in the process of figuring out or making sense of that at the moment. Yeah.
It's interesting. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it seems like really your research is going on a thread. And now I just was reminded when you were talking to another film that we have in the selection this year. If you haven't watched it, maybe I recommend you to watch it, because it could be interesting, because there is another artist, Wang Li Liu, who who made this film called When the Sea Sends Forth a Forest. Is a film that we have in the selection in the section called Heritage. And it's interesting because he also, now I just made this connection in this exact moment, but he also used technology to totally reconstruct an event from the past. So yeah, maybe it could be interesting for you, or in general, yeah, it's interesting to know, to see connections through different filmmakers, maybe also that use a very different way of using technology, but the intuition maybe is similar in the on the base. So yeah.
Thank you for the tip. What was it called? When the Sea
Sends Forth a Forest.
Yeah,
it's a very beautiful film. And
I
we
will
put it in the section called Heritage, exactly for this reason, because it's addressing an old event from the past, historical event. So it's a historical kind of heritage, and he used technology to reconstruct some scenes. So it's also, then of course, maybe in stylistically, maybe in a totally different way than how you want to use it, but it's interesting to see that there are other people maybe who are going in on the same path. Yeah, so if you happen to watch it, I think it could be interesting. And also for all the audience to this interview, we recommend you both films if you are interested in these themes. For sure, Ruthless by Karolina is a very, very beautiful and strong film. And if you want to then go deeper, you can also watch all the other films of this section and this film of the heritage section, which is a section that is somehow very much related to yours, to the one where we put your film, because it's always time and heritage are themes that are somehow related to each other. So yeah, this year we have a lot this theme. We noticed that there were a lot of filmmakers addressing this theme. Maybe it means that it's very present for us at the moment, like so.
Especially in the pandemic, I think it's easy to go back to where your roots are, where it's an accessible topic right now.
Probably. Yeah, it's really a need that we feel. So yeah, so it was very nice to have you today here, Karolina, and to be able to talk to you. And yeah, I wish you all the best for all your future projects. And of course, you are always welcome to visit us at the festival in the future, or also just to have other talks like this, because it was very, very nurturing for us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been very interesting to talk to you also.
Thank you. And have a nice day, and goodbye to everybody. We will meet tomorrow at 10 for another interview.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.